Thank you for joining the America's Jobs Team podcast. I am so excited today. I have with me today Linda DiMario, and Linda and I both serve on the board of directors for the International Economic Development Council, so I get to see her great kind of thought leadership there, but she's also with the Greater Irvine Chamber. And so, you know, as we look at leaders in America's jobs team, the people who are working every day to support the men and women who are creating jobs, who are building vibrant communities, who are providing the resources for government, the resources for philanthropy, we want to celebrate the economic development community. And Linda's kind of the epitome of what that looks like, particularly when we look at the hospitality world and the incredible things going on. So I'm so grateful she's here. And so we talked a little bit, and I know the answer to this question, but our audience doesn't. So Linda, tell us how you got into economic development, working for the Chamber, how you got into this role you're into today.
There's no straight line associated with my career path. And quite frankly, I have found that to be part of the great adventure. And so I really coach people to not be discouraged if they took a detour and it didn't work out. Just retrain your focus because something good is around the corner. But I came at it through I went into the Air Force to earn my GI Bill to go to college. And I had always been attracted to politics. And so my degree is political science. It didn't take me long to put two and two together and figure out that at the core of politics is public policy. And public policy in terms of everything from the environment to transportation to, quality of life. And I mean, just a whole list of things that indeed turn out to be economic development. Yeah. And so in the early stages of my career, I didn't see it in those terms. I admit that I didn't. I understood that whether it was the hotels I was working for or the companies I was working for, that they were an integral part contributing to the economy of a city, but I didn't understand it holistically until I got into destination marketing and management. And when I transitioned to that, having worked for the city of Oakland, Tucson, Arizona, as well as Long Beach, California, and Arlington, Texas, that's when the two and two became four for me. I realized that everything we were doing was contributing to a much more holistic quality of life, contributing to the tax base, contributing to the ability to have, a safe and secure environment in which to live and work and play, all of those components. And that's when I realized that is economic development. And so I began to trade more in that holistic way. I never looked upon tourism as being somehow separate and apart. It is, in fact, economic development. And that's what gave me the courage and interest to start exploring all aspects of it, beyond tourism, the business attraction and the foreign direct investment and workforce development and so forth. And as a consequence, I developed a bit of a reputation when I was consulting that allowed me to, transcend the tourism and move more holistically and comprehensively into economic development. And that combination came to the attention of the Irvine Chamber over 7 years ago, because that's precisely what they were looking for. Someone that had both of those components, tourism, because we're funded to be the Tourism Promotion Bureau, and a full scope of economic development work.
And I think you're dead on. Too many people in our business want to segregate tourism, but when I look at it, if the definition of manufacturing is taking a resource and changing it in a way that people outside of your region purchase that resource, creating primary jobs, that's the same definition as destination tourism, of taking our resources, adding value to it, and getting people from outside to give you money to purchase that resource.
And there you go. And again, we just have to keep saying that over and over and over again. This allows the residents of a city, town, county, or so forth, to benefit from money coming in from outside their area. And I mean, life is good. That's the way it should be. Let other people contribute to your economy so that the full burden as well as benefits don't fall to you.
Yeah, and I think it also, in maybe no time more than any of us have seen in our careers, we're understanding the value of a diversified economy. We're understanding that we need to have an economy that's not dependent on any one area. You know, I happen to live in Michigan, where when auto shut down because of COVID, we went to 21% unemployment when peer communities were at 7 or 8. And you know, when things are good, they're really good, but when you can't meet cars, things can get pretty bad pretty fast. So having that balanced portfolio of an economy, I think, really is critical.
You know, Ron, I think one of the things I learned when I had a consulting practice, as you know, for 5-6 years before I went to work for the Irvine Chamber. And one of the things I learned in working with all the cities and towns across the country, a lot of work in the Midwest and back east, only when their back was against the wall, only when they were just urgently, in need of refocusing or reimagining, only when they had lost their major employer, only when they'd suffered a catastrophic event or something. That's when they go, whoa, all hands on deck. We have to figure out, we can't be just a one-trick pony. And you and I, as economic developers, are sitting here going, please understand, anything can happen. And sure enough, here it is.
That's right.
You really want communities to understand that the more diversified their portfolio is, they don't have to be everything to everyone. But if you can have 2 or 3, what I call 21st century industry sectors in your community, you're going to be able to survive and thrive through the most difficult challenges better than if you have just a focus on one industry.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think one of the things I worry about is we're seeing communities kind of get that in COVID, and they're talking the right thing. We're either hearing communities say we're going to do the right thing, and we're going to have those 2 or 3, or they're pulling back completely out of economic development. But what I hope is this isn't a case of the guy who has the heart attack and promises his doctor that he'll eat right and exercise, and he does it for about 6 weeks. And then the next thing you know, it's bacon for lunch and dinner and back to smoking cigarettes and doesn't exercise. And 6 years later has another heart attack. I hope that's not where we are. And I think economic developers are the one that have the voice and the responsibility to say, you know what, not on my watch. We're not going back.
Yes. And Ron, you are so astute. I mean, that insight is just so spot on. I am seeing in this country, because we are just such an independent lot, but I am seeing pockets of that. I'm seeing pockets of, back to business as normal, as if nothing happened. And it's discouraging to me as an economic developer, and also, quite frankly, as a pragmatic practitioner, that they would be so short-sighted. One of the things that the pandemic revealed in Irvine, Orange County, and I'm quite confident across the country, was how completely, utterly ill-prepared our businesses of all sizes were for anything like this. And I even drilled down to the fact there was a segment of small sole proprietorship businesses that they wouldn't know how to manage through a water main break.
Yeah.
Plus a pandemic. Utterly, completely unprepared. And so once you've had this wake-up call, you hope that they'll say, wow, I'm raising my hand. I need some help. Let me go talk to SCORE. Let me go check in on those webinars that the Irvine Chamber is doing, or Small Business Development Center is delivering. And just school yourself, better informed, better prepared. As economic developers, yes, we have to be that voice of reason.
Yeah, I would have told you before the pandemic, my team working with existing industries, existing companies, was doing a great job, that our database was robust, and we had a phenomenally great strategy until the wheels fall off. And then we were blessed that we ended up with about $8 million of federal dollars that we got to redistribute to our small businesses. And so as we're taking applications, we discovered not dozens, but 100 companies that should have been in our database that were small manufacturers, small service companies that we didn't know existed. And it has completely changed how we're looking at what our responsibilities are, about how we realign staffing, how the programming that we're providing to understand that. I mean, it was shocking to me how little cash on hand companies had.
Yes.
And their ability to react to, as you said, a water main break. And I started out as a small businessman and had a small chain of convenience stores. And so I know what that looked like, because the people I ended up buying stores from were folks who just ran out of energy and money. And so I understood it. But when it's everyone at the same time, it just showed how vulnerable our economy really is and how important it is that economic development go from a command and control model that served big to a consulting model that serves all. And it fundamentally is changing how we're doing our work and how we see ourselves. And we're blessed that we're fairly large. We have 30 team members, and so we can pivot. But if you're a 2 or 3 person economic development group right now, my empathy is so high, because in some cases, I used to have an admiral who worked for me, and he'd say, we're the sober sailors at the party. We're the guys that got to drive everybody else home. Yeah. And I know what that's like to be in a small group. So, what you're saying so resonates with where we're at right now.
Yeah. And see, and that's why you're just confirmed, which is that this isn't just happening to us. This is literally in every town and city across this country. I am so confident of that it's almost frightening. And that what you mentioned about the cash on hand, oh my goodness, we discovered that people couldn't even identify where their payroll records were. Yeah. They couldn't produce what they needed to for the PPP. Mm-hmm. They were having trouble getting getting a bank. Why? They didn't have a relationship. They just had a bank account.
Yep.
So, I mean, the list goes on. And our response to that as an organization is to say, okay, here were the things we uncovered, including language problems. We held hands with hundreds of companies through that EIDL application or PPP because they had trouble with the language. So we learned a lot, and
by language, you mean bilingual issues, or you mean just didn't understand what the heck the government's talking about?
Both. Yeah. Both, Ron, because I'm telling you, we were filling out EDA paperwork, recently. I'm telling you, if they want to discourage people, they couldn't do a better job.
That's right.
So, yeah, and that's what we discovered with the EIDL and the PPP. My colleague with the city of Irvine and I, who we 1-2 punch this, we were just constantly scrambling to understand, work with our wonderful SBA team here and SBDC teams and say, please interpret this for me, because people are not understanding it. But it should never be that difficult. And so when we talk about language problems, we're talking about interpretation, but we're also talking about, yes, whether it was Korean or Chinese or Japanese or Vietnamese or Cambodian or Spanish. These were languages that were first languages for a great many of our people in Orange County. And they were very successful businesses, but they came head up against, I'm not understanding what I'm hearing. So there were some things that we hope we're addressing in a variety of new initiatives that will help better prepare people. But as you well know, Ron, we cannot, we can take the horse and show them where the water is, but we can't make him or her drink. And that's why I think your idea of consulting, but it's also a matter of leadership. We have to have the courage to say what needs to be said and to lead people to a better place.
No, I couldn't agree more. It's critical. And I don't know anyone else in our society, in our communities, that has that capacity. No one has the Rolodexes, and I know that dates me, the databases that we have in terms of government officials and community leaders, philanthropy, the faith-based community. We have the ability to bring people together around problems that others simply just don't have.
Yes. Yes.
And it's time that, and a lot of economic developers have embraced this for a lot of years, but I think as a profession, we have to support and help build that leadership muscle of those who haven't done this before. Because as you know, one of my worries is that I'm getting really tired of taking people out of my databases because they've left the profession, because they just didn't feel supported, didn't feel they had the capacity to win. And then they go off and they're wildly successful at something else. And it's a loss to their communities, but it's a loss to our profession as well.
Yeah, we talk about this, whether it's through the IEDC board, or we talk about this among ourselves, is that, as I said, we have to exhibit and we have to practice that leadership. And when we talk about leadership, it is about influencing the resources, the people, the places, the organizations that we need to bring to the table. It's about influencing them. It's about rallying them to a good purpose. And that's probably the most important characteristic that we can bring to our work. If we can signal that we're capable of that people can trust us to bring the right people together to move things forward. Wow, solid gold. And it'll serve every community very, very well.
I know that you were a mentor, somebody who lifts up others, but what role have mentors had in your life? Because I hear you, we got to build this capacity and trust, and that's really a function of mentoring. But where did you learn to mentor from, and what impact did it have in your life?
Ron, I was thinking about this, and I'm thinking, I honestly cannot say, and I've heard other people say this, and that's why it feels a little strange to me, but there hasn't been any single one mentor in my life. I will tell you quite candidly, the people who changed my life early on, when you were a marginal student in high school, and you go into the Air Force because that's going to give you a skill, and you earn the GI Bill, and you go to college, and your first year in college, people like a philosophy professor suggest that you should take the Metaphysics of Aristotle because you did so well in Philosophy 101. And your political science teacher suggests that you'd be an excellent constitutional law student. All of a sudden, I'm thinking and looking at myself differently than others had. So for me, that is also a form of mentoring. When people express their confidence in you, when people see something in you that perhaps you didn't see yourself, or maybe you just need confirmation of. So I'm going to say to you, as cliche and corny as it sounds, there have been people in my life that have made me better because they've seen something in me that I didn't see myself. But almost everyone, and that includes you, my friend, everyone has been a mentor to me. I am just a walking sponge. And I'm learning from you, and I'm learning from colleagues across the country and around the globe every day. And I think that's probably the best form of mentorship ever.
I love that you started out that way. And, I believe the four most powerful words in the human language are, I believe in you. I think you can change the world. And with that, any team or individual can achieve more for themselves, for the group, for society, with somebody else just whispering in their ear, I believe in you. And, looking behind you, and I see the word believe on your board.
Yeah.
But it is that idea that we get mentored. And most frankly, most leaders I know don't have formal mentor-mentee relations. They have people that inspire them and people that encourage them, and they're there for a season and you learn from them. But I love this concept, as you said, that you're a sponge, because I don't know a single great leader who's not an incredible learner. Somebody who, and they're learning not just from the book they select for themselves, but they're learning about from society. And, you know, my belief is I want to be around people who are a generation older and 2 and 3 generations younger. Because
Yes.
it's those that are younger that are going to keep me from getting old. Because when you get old, it's simply, it isn't a matter of age, it's that you quit learning and you
Yes.
quit being relevant, and then you quit being relevant and there's not much left for you in this world. So
That's why we say, you know, don't judge me by my age, judge me by my ideas.
that's it.
I mean, I understand that, you know, that when we talk about the younger generations, I remember when the whole conversations about the millennials first came out, and I now have such a short fuse on that, because yes, there are millennials that probably aren't living up to our expectations in terms of work ethic. Sorry, but you and I both know, Ron, there's people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s fit right in that category too. And
go to your high school reunion and see if everybody there lived up to the expectations you had for them.
At the IEDC meeting, they had a breakout, and the breakout was run by millennials, and he put a group of words up there that we just use for millennials, you know, selfish, self-absorbed, you know, and everybody laughed. They thought, see, I told you. Those words came from a 1968 Life magazine article on my generation. I rest my case.
Yeah. We all think less of the generation behind us and more of the generation in front of us than we should. And you know, I'm lucky that, you know, I'm in a team of 30 of us tonight, and there are 4 men, and more than half of the team are women under the age of 35. I've never been around people who work harder and smarter and are more dynamic and hard charging and driven and get more done at the end of the day. I'll put them against anybody in the world. And so you can call them millennials all you want. I'll just call them incredible leaders.
Good for you.
Yeah. So, you know, COVID's been hard on everyone we know. There's no one we know, whether your business has thrived because of COVID or it's crashed because of COVID. But for our economic development leaders listening, the 5,000 or 6,000 people who are listening when this comes out, and another double that'll listen over a course of a couple weeks, what's the lesson that you learned in your leadership during COVID that is worth passing on to others?
There's so many, truly, so many lessons, things that I learned about myself, and you know how I have managed going through this, and you know the isolation part of that equation. But as from a leadership perspective, communication, connection, listening. It is ever more critical and more essential that as leaders, this isn't about us. This is about the people who are now cast out, working from, you know, 17 or 30 different places around the community or across the country. And how you sustain the sense of camaraderie and the organizational culture, how you sustain and motivate them to meet the common purpose and objectives. It's all about listening to them, finding ways to keep them connected, in impactful, intentional ways, and to be very purposeful about your communication. And I've seen signs of people saying, well, I don't have anything to say, so we're not going to have that staff meeting we normally have. And I'm thinking, we had a staff meeting during the good times. Why wouldn't you have a staff meeting during the tough times? Yeah. Even more critical. So for me, it was about understanding that this wasn't just happening to me. This was happening to others on the team, and finding ways to keep them connected to one another was essential.
Yeah, I think you're dead on. For us, and we already had a system where we meet in person every morning at 8:05. We talk about our schedules. We talk about the week, who's going to be in. It's not dramatically dissimilar to the hotels that you would be involved in, where the teams are huddling. But ours is about our organization. And then when you're on Zoom, what we found was those meetings got longer because people needed more human connection with each other.
Need to see each other.
And then our management team would meet separately for another 15 minutes. And it ended up, we were dedicating about an hour a day to communications. But it also became a lot where I would just open up every day and say, okay, here's what I'm scared of. Here's what the things we're addressing today. Here's how we're going to do that. And then the next day it would be, well, that didn't work because the world changed on us again.
Right.
But acknowledging this anxiety and rawness was what people needed more than anything.
Yes, sir.
And then as we started coming back into the office together, well, to be honest, people weren't willing to give that up. They still want that level of connection and commitment to each other. And I also, the more we communicated, the more I saw people accelerating their own leadership, being willing to say, I'm fully informed, I'm going to make a decision. I'm not going to wait till I get more information. I feel like I have enough to make a decision. And that's when teams are great teams.
Yes. No, yeah, I think that scope of communication, good on you.
No, I think it's, for me, it's just selfish. I am like the ultimate not want to micromanage people. And so if we can help, if I can pour fuel in everybody's gas tank, it's not my job to fill up everybody's cup. It's my job to empty my cup. And if all I can do is keep emptying my cup into others, and if we can do that as leaders, then that just magnifies things.
Agree.
I started, I told this story a lot of times, but I grew up very poor, and job was the most important thing. And so, when I realized that I could have a job that helped other people get jobs, it was an epiphany to me that it just never dawned on me that you could be more than yourself.
Right.
And so economic developers, as we look, they have so much capacity now to be agents of change and grace. But it's going to take people who have amazing abilities to communicate with their own team, with their community leaders, to say, I see the future, come, let's go together. And those that do it right are going to thrive in ways that are unimaginable.
Yes, sir.
What excites you most about the future?
Wow. I think, again, everybody has their moments where you think, this was so stunning in its complexity and its capacity to just sort of stop the world for a while. But it's the optimist in me that looks forward and says, okay, we're going to be smart enough to learn something from this. We're going to be smart enough to understand that this is not a one-off, that not just as a country, but as a globe, as a, you know, a world of people and cultures, that we're all going to be susceptible to something. And that hopefully we're going to learn from this. We're going to make the adjustments, and we're going to adapt so that we're not quite as vulnerable as we were this time around. That's what I'm excited about is the learning again. Hopefully we will have learned from clearly mistakes and missteps, problems and so forth, that just, we have an opportunity now to say, okay, let's step back and take a look. What did we do well? What did we not do well? What can we do better? And build on it. That's what I'm hoping for. That's what I'm excited about. And that's what keeps me going every morning. You know, it keeps me from falling into that pit of despair, because I think that, no, there's enough of us, or more of us, that are forward looking, that we're going to lean in. We're going to lean into this and learn from it and somehow make it better.
That's awesome. I couldn't say it better. I'm so excited about what has been accelerated because of COVID, that we don't have to drag the future forward anymore. It went past us, and now we get to catch up to the acceleration, whether that's technology or social change, or the ability, or we're going to see a lot of retirements. And so young people are going to get to lead in levels, younger leaders are going to get to lead at levels that they couldn't have imagined doing a year ago. And all of those are positive things. All of that's going to be great. So,
yep.
Linda, DiMario, thank you for being here. Thank you for being my friend. Thank you for your leading locally and leading nationally. You make the world better every day, and I'm so proud for you.
Oh, Ron, you're so kind. Thank you. And you know, that's a mutual admiration society.
I
Thank you for this.
Thank you.